Nothing can separate me from your love so free. Someone told me about your love, how you came from heaven above.
Welcome again to another episode of Ishden. It's your boy, Robert Green, along with his partner in righteousness. But that's not a crime thing, because the one who step up the stick for the crime situation. I don't want to SOE. Lockdown Marvel, lockdown Fatal. This is a partner in righteousness, Robert Green and Napoleon Black at you again in full color. If you can use no rainbow color, but full color.
Oh no, black and green.
Again, it is just a wonderful privilege to share this platform with my brethren. And it is not just a privilege to share the platform, but to help people as we share this platform, bro. And as usual, welcome to my beer, brother.
Yes.
Yeah, and we can't start the show though saying, this is Ishden. Boom! Welcome again, brethren. Austin there, Jamaica, if you can't believe it, people. I'm not even know if you want nobody say that. Probably by the time we're here, he'll fly out again. But the man has so we may try to link up as three brethren.
Yes.
And do this thing in person. If we can, you're going to benefit from it. Last week we spoke about, daddy issues, and how we see this manifested in females. I want to man them know, brethren, you need to start get involved in the lives of your daughters,
Absolutely.
lives of your nieces. Show them good, clean acceptance and give them good, clean presence without any undertone of sexuality or desire in any form or way. And, if we don't do that, we are going to perpetuate some of the stuff that we see happening in society.
Absolutely.
In our females, and we want to stop that. Primarily in the church, we have to start to dignify our women. A few programs ago, we spoke about the Jesus factor, how Jesus dealt with females as he came across them. And even though he dealt with a little 12-year-old girl, the tenderness, the driving out those persons who were distracting and those who ridiculed her as well. So that she could come back to life. Damsel, all right. I want to speak that word into our females who are broken, or females who have been, have experienced this neglect or lack of presence, or the father is there, but he has just not dealt with you right. And we're saying, damsel, let life return to your soul and your spirit. But this week we want to now look at what we call father wounds. And bro, the first time I heard that, I didn't know what it was rubbish to me. Because, I first heard this in seminary. And I went to seminary as a teenager, not exposed to a lot of material.
Yes.
So when I heard this terminology, it never really makes sense to me, right? So we want to first begin with a definition of father wounds. Napoleon, a young youth listening to this thing, what exactly is this terminology, father wounds?
What we're talking about, Bobby, is that sense of brokenness. Sometimes it's physical, it is certainly emotional, psychological, mental, and spiritual. That in this case, boys, young men experience because their fathers were abusive being present, or they were abusive not being present, or they were abusive part-time present.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about the pain inflicted on a boy by what his father expressed in the different ways in his life, and how that trajectory has informed the patterns that he himself has come to be living out.
Yeah. And if we can go back to a statement we made last week regarding the females and bring it into our conversation. That it's not about who pushes your button.
Absolutely.
But it's about who programmed you.
Absolutely.
And we this has to be pertinent to our conversation as well, because we are looking at the narrative of fathers and how they function to shape a child. And, it is the presence in a toxic way, and it is the lack of presence which also turns out to be toxic.
Absolutely.
I heard Mark Driscoll speaking on the topic, and I just listened to his introduction and then went on. And he recounted watching a UFC fight. And this, UFC is not boxing and it's not fake
Yeah.
wrestling. It is
Mhm.
absolutely gory. It's a gory thing to sit down and watch. Men bleeding, one-hit knockouts and these kind of things.
Yeah.
And he said this young boy became victorious in one of the matches, won the international championship. And as they put the belt around him, he folded his fist or clenched his fist
Mhm.
and looked deep into the camera with tears running down his eyes and said, "See, Dad, I am mounted to something."
Oh.
And Mark said as he read the man's story, this young boy, at about age 7, his father put a loaded gun in his mouth and said, "I would pull the trigger, but you are not even worth the bullet."
Oh.
And that may be the extreme of it.
Wow.
That may be the extreme of it. But definitely, this man, at such a crucial, a moment of celebration, he was seeing his father in every opponent. And when he
Yeah.
finally won this international championship, he was saying, "Listen to me, I finally made it." And so many of our young men in our society, bro, do this in various ways, right? The wounding of the father, things that fathers do to affect the esteem of these young men. In
Mhm.
our society, Naps, how can we, Jamaican society, let me first say that it seems as if many of us go through life without recognizing that there is such a thing as a father wound. We have been taught, cultured in a way that we don't expect much of our fathers. We
Yeah.
go through life lacking so much, but not even knowing that we lack so much,
Yeah.
right? What can we point to in society? And we may go to the number games, but what can we point to in our society that we can say, the reason you're behaving like this, bro, is because there's a void. What can we point to?
And that's a good place to start a conversation, because all of us, you and I, we carry our fathers.
Yeah.
We don't escape our fathers.
Mm.
I grew up not knowing my father for the early part of my life. And I'm now married, I'm settled at home. And my sister from the official family comes to visit me.
Mm.
And I had already decided I want to be nothing like my father.
Yeah.
And we were having a conversation, my sister and I, and I'm laughing. And she looks at me and she says, "You sound just like Dad."
Mm.
No, that hit me hard. Says to me that you carry your father.
Yeah.
We can't escape that reality. And it is not only at that level, but also what he did, what he did not do, who he was not.
Yeah.
And all of these things are variables that eventually play out in us, as young men, as grown men, as married men, as single men, wherever we find ourselves in the paradigm. How father was, who father was, how father expressed himself in those early days,
Yeah.
form and inform, did significantly part of the programming in how we respond emotionally, how we respond relationally, even how we respond spiritually.
Yeah.
A lot of that happens because of what father was or was not in
Yeah.
those formative years. It's critical that we understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't until I again was introduced to this kind of thing that certain things that affected me spiritually, bro. Like I struggled, and I didn't know why. In my early years as a Christian, I struggled with the Lord's Prayer, this
Yes.
critical emblem of the church and of Jamaican society. Because
Yes.
this is something that I was saying from years and years growing up as a child. But the Our Father part didn't sit well with me.
Mhm.
And many people might just throw it out and say, "No, man, whatever, it was Satan. It really was just,"
It's demonic. You need to be delivered from your demon.
and we do that.
Yeah.
We do that, right? But for me, my father was present, but not present.
Yeah.
He was in reach. I could go and visit my father, but I didn't grow up knowing my father in the house. And the
Yes.
first introduction of a man living in my house was one where I saw my mother being abused.
Yeah.
So that was not a good image of fatherhood. And I didn't understand why I struggled with the prayer until I learned about these things, you know, because if you ask most of my brethren them who don't have a relationship with them father, them just see it as normative.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, because of how the society is now. And there is a situation as well in our society. And I think, again, where the church has to begin to inform society that marriage is still an honorable thing. You know, a study was done in the States by, I think, IFI is the name of the organization. And he was looking at the whole birth rate. And that in 1971, only 4% of children were born pre-marriage. This is obviously in the States, because Jamaica has her own problems this from forever, you know. And in the 1990s, over 40% of children were born pre-marriage. And obviously in some of those households, there were single, headed by mothers.
Yeah.
In our context, we have a lot of single-headed households, but we also have the households of grandparents in those situations. But even as far back as that generation where grandparents are, we do find this absence of fathers because our situation, we didn't have a strong culture of marriage in the lower and middle class society. Well, lower class definitely coming up because of the impacts of slavery, the sexual revolution, and those kind of things. How can we as a church begin to aid in restoring this institution of fatherhood?
Again, we have to go back to the roots, and the seminary experience has been so critical for both of us. When in psychology, I was asked to do my genogram, as you were.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I look at some people's genogram, you see, grandmother, grandfather, mother, father, 2 children, and the dog.
Yeah.
I never have that, Bobby. So I never know where to start mine. Mine was an anomaly. It never have no father figure to talk of. I don't know my father's people them. I didn't know what to put. I was torn. I wept, and my psychology teacher at the time, Reverend Courtney Richards, had to take me through a process of understanding who I am.
Yeah.
Even though my genogram was not the standard genogram, the American model couldn't sort it out for me. The Jamaican, none of the textbooks could sort it out for me. You know, and so I had to find that thing for myself in another place, you know. And so we have to start a conversation there in terms of an understanding of the importance of what it means when God puts family together.
Yeah.
Mother and father and children in that space, because as we had said from day one, the complementing of each other to make sure that that child coming up is growing in a balanced, healthy, God-centered kind of a way.
Yeah.
We have to go back again to Genesis 1 and 2, where God sets the family frame in terms of what it should look like for the safety and the well-being of those children who are coming on. So we as Christians, we hold in our hands a precious treasure in helping community to understand what God intended when he set in the garden what family life should look like. How the children, the state and space in which children should be cultivated, uplifted, and nourished. I think if we begin to go back there, a lot of the issues that we're contending with, not that they'll go away, because over in chapter 4 of Genesis, we saw what Cain did to Abel without Abel, you know, what I mean? So that's it. But it's critical to understand that if we don't have that foundation, then what happened in Genesis 4 would have been worse.
Yeah. And, you know, as people and we want to talk to pastors. Like, if we can get back to the Genesis 4 narrative, the kingdom narrative, and understanding of, for me, bro, and I'm sure for you, anthropology is rooted in Genesis chapter 4.
Yes.
In Genesis chapter 1 and 2, sorry.
Chapter 1 and
That
2.
is the foundation of what God intended.
Right.
And so much can be worked out. I don't think we wrestle, like really and truly sit down and wrestle with Genesis chapter 1 and 2 as much as we should. You know, and we are saying again, like, I celebrate my mother.
Yeah.
But for the last, since COVID, well, since my sister broke her ankle, my mother has been living with me. And I do sometimes I torture her because I like frightening my mother. So
Yeah.
I go home and I'll just pounce upon her and love her response, laugh for hours afterwards.
Yes.
And I celebrate my mother. But I really and truly have come to recognize that there are certain things that my father was supposed to give to me that my
Yes.
mother could not substitute, couldn't come
Yeah,
off the
yeah.
bench and give to me. Right? So we are not in any ways and means downplaying the importance of mothers. But we
Yeah.
are saying God created a unit for a reason. And there are certain things that a father is supposed to give to the child. What am I supposed to look for in my father, Napoleon? What is it that my father should provide for me that I did not get, and for you as well? And what is it that you have now started giving to your own son
Yeah.
that can shore him up?
Yeah. There's some things that are shared, but come out of that understanding that there's the strength, certain types of strength issues that should come from a father to cause that boy to understand better who he is.
Yeah.
The inner issues as well, to make him understand how important it is that as male, as father, as protector, as guardian, those ideas, very, very important, not only of spouse, but of children and of space, living space. Those things are very, very important. Critically, but not exclusively, as the one who provides, and so on. So these are some of the key issues. That is not to say that their sisters will not be able to do any of those, but in terms of critical functions, in that sense, to help to make society, home safe and secure. Critical roles that father ought to play and pass on to family and then to wider society. Those are some of the critical components that a father helps to impart. Authority in an important way, but not authority in a power way that controls, but authority that empowers, authority that transforms, authority that uplifts, and critically, authority that serves. These are some of the things that are critical in that early space, so that the boy begins to understand what it means to be a strong man, an integrity man, and a man. The new term we're now hearing is man-integrity, narrating and developing and showing what it means, what God intended when he made that person male, boy, man.
Yeah. And in doing these snaps, because again, in our society, most times, a woman don't mind if a man not dead, you know, as long as he might provide.
Yeah.
You know, and I've never heard of a man being taken to family court for neglecting his child emotionally or spiritually. Is only, well, as far as I have known, it's only when the man neglects a child financially, he's not providing. So many of our men would go through society and their boast is, yo, I provide for all of my picking them, you know, right? But we are saying that is not enough. That's not the only thing. It is a part of it, right? It is a part of it. But you cannot just provide and leave it like that. So a lot of our men may be providers and they feel fulfilled because they provided for the family. But we are saying the man-child needs a lot more. What of this notion, Naps, that if a man too chummy with him boy picnic, him go become a sissy, quote unquote, or he may, because I've heard it, he may be predisposed to homosexual relationship because the man that you know, if you hug up your boy, pick me and kiss up your boy, is there how do we wrestle with this notion? Because many of our men My father not grew up with him father, I hug him up on them kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? And I did not do that. The few times I've embraced my father, me initiated, brother. You get what I'm saying? So is there this notion that a man should be affectionate towards his child, his son in particular?
It's an important point. And the truth is that if you do not teach your boy to be affectionate, then that daughter that comes that he is supposed to show affection and helps her to understand male affection, she's going to be damaged.
Yeah.
Can I tell you? And I'm sure my boy won't object. He's in his late 20s. He still hugs me, he still kisses me, he still embraces me, and that is a part of our relationship. So now that in his own relationship, he's giving his son similar affirmation so that he's not sissified by the process. And I don't mean to be unkind. He's not made effeminate because of the process. He's embracing his whole self so that, you see, we have to always keep on looking down the road, because we are not looking sufficiently down the road, Bobby, to what we are robbing our boys of. Because our boys are going to become fathers, and our boys are going to become fathers of daughters. And when our boys become fathers and cannot give their daughters that, then they're going to get it from other places. Things that hurt them, things that humiliate them, things that just eat them up, because we in our space never give that to our boys. They can't then give it to the girls because they never learned that from us.
True.
That's important. The blessing, the touching, the interaction. And if there's this constant coldness between father and son, then what is he going to give to his daughter? And if there's this constant coldness between father and the son, what is going to happen when that son of yours now has a boy, and you have to train to be balanced and focused and helpful and sensitive and caring and all of those things? So the female, what is it that we're going to give to him? Nothing. If we can just say, boy, as my father did treat me, there was no love, nobody said I love you, none of that, fine, that's your narrative. But all of us have to think of our own boy and what is going to happen to him when he is in relationship, and who are going to be affected. Because I, as grandfather, never placed in my son those things that are going to affect my grandson and my granddaughter. It's important. We have to think generationally if we're going to make the change.
I don't know where I saw this quote, but as you were speaking, it came back to mind. They said that a society will never move forward until the current generation starts to dig wells that they will never ever drink from.
Absolutely.
And this is what we are saying, people, that you are doing this for your grandchild. You may never, like, me will go start late. May never grew up, may never live to see a grandkid, But I have to make sure that when this child comes along, boy or girl, I have to deal with my situation properly. I remember, because I never grew up like that, bro. So our mentor, we talk about this all over the world whenever we do these talks. And when I first was introduced to this man as a mentor, I was looking at him and said, yo, that man are too touchy. I don't want to come put no hand around me and lay hand pa, put hand pa forehead and I said, nah, brother, I'm not depend them thing with him. And we talk about this.
And where you come from?
Get me, I said, nah, man, I'm not deal with them kind of thing. You get what I say? And I remember him invite the first time I went by his house, he invited us over for run a boat. And him say, yo, nobody make no little but the little girl pick the dumpling or something. I said, brother, you move. So like, and I remember when he moved from the house that he shared to his own flat. And we'd go over. I remember the exact layout of the living room. So there was a long settee and a couple other settees in the house. But and a step to the left-hand side that went upstairs. And I always sat on the step for the first few meetings. Right? Because I was not comfortable with this level of affection from a male. And I was suspicious of it. But then by his not insistence, he allowed me to come around. And I gave this man a heart attack because I now started to see him as father, as dad. And I nearly gave him a heart attack. I just walk in his living room one day and kiss him on him forehead.
Yes.
And he must say, "No, sir, who this?" You get me? But I can tell you, Napoleon, the woman who will come into my life, my grandchildren, my children, like my nephew is reaping this.
Yeah.
Because I share space with him, and from he was born, I made sure that I embraced him. I hug him before as I reach him. Not now because of the COVID thing, but
Yeah.
I make sure before he goes to his bed one time up, I hug him, tell him good night, tell him I love you. Right? And these are assurances that our children will need, my children will need, and you have been giving your children naps.
Yeah.
So the counter side of this is neglect and abuse. Right? And we are saying that this has led, well, brighter men than us, the Ian Boyne and what's his name? His name just slipped me a while ago. The loudmouth sociologists that talk in a pot. I like hear him talk.
Yes.
Gill.
Yes.
These men have posited and have looked at society and said a lot of the things, the maladaptive behaviors that we are seeing, the formations of gangs and these kind of things is as a result of fatherlessness in our society. Do you agree with this standpoint, bro?
There was a crew called the Fatherless Crew, as you know.
Yeah.
And if those who have did the studies with them have talked about that, the fact of the fatherlessness.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are those who feel that they'll never make it beyond 21 years old, some 18 years old. Again, because of what their fathers have narrated for them. Their fathers are in prison, their fathers are dead, and all of these things. So they have come to believe, and they have come to embrace a narrative that says, this is as far as I will go, 21 years, 18 for some. And so they're just going to live it out, live it hard, burn the candles at both ends, because that's what they saw of their father.
Yeah.
They have seen of their father where these men are tough men, and they're never allowed to trust. They are never allowed to cry. And I think it was Dr. Barry Davis who talks about the boys who don't get to cry tears, no cry bullets, and that kind of thing.
Wow.
Because that's a narrative that they have seen, and there's a tough side of what we have encountered in our culture.
Yeah.
What we have also seen is the exploitation of some of those boys who now become the carriers of guns and drugs and so on. And this is because, you know, for the Father's Day sermon, I talked about Jephthah. And as you know, Jephthah was born of a prostitute woman. His brothers didn't want him around. And then the word says that he took around him hoodlums and scoundrels.
Yeah.
Powerful man. And what happened because of who he attracted around him? Other men who have had similar experiences. And this is what has happened in our own culture. What is also true is some of the rites of passage that some of these boys have to go through to become a part of these gangs. We can talk about them because they're so critical, and this is a reality for so many of our boys who have come to be a part and become loyal to men who exploit them, men who use them. But that sense of loyalty is so important to being male and committed to something, some purpose. And sometimes it is the idea of purpose that drives some of our men in some serious kinds of ways that make them so committed to a particular cause that absolutely nothing would prevent them from doing it.
Wow. Yeah,
because of what happens in those formative years and the kind of reaction against what father did or what father did not do in the formation. You and I and others of us, Brent, Teddy and others, are thankful that we had somebody who intervened in our space and set us in a particular direction. You know, even though we are Christian men and we have remained so, our lives could still have taken a different course, even though we still wear the culture and the trappings of Christianity. We could still have done some crazy things. But with his intervention in a significant way, our lives took a particular path where, you know, we are able to influence, impact, train, disciple, and guide some youth to some different ends because of what he did for us.
Yeah, it is crucial for us to point that out, bro. And we want to dwell on that a little bit. But if I can say, I grew up in a garrison, like
Yeah.
Glendavon, place where most people afraid I'm obey. And if I didn't know this before, in terms of looking at the youth them who form the gangs, there's something I saw online that outlined the formation of gangs in Glendavon. But having rubbed the shoulders of a lot of these youths, I can tell you, even the ones who had their fathers around, their fathers were murdered before their eyes. And these young boys have to live with this. And as a result, as you rightly say, we had a crew in Glendavon called the Ants crew. And these are all teenage boys. Nobody was over 18. And when you check a lot of these youths, the fathers weren't present or the fathers were dead. So people, this is no play thing, And I think for too long we have undervalued the role of fathers in the lives of your children, primarily lives of your boys. Yes, the girls, but I've never been held up by a girl with a gun, bro. Two you juke me down, one you do on 9 in my face, well, pointing at my gut, and one you do on next 9 in my back of my head. You get me? I'm saying a lot of these youths who perpetrate crimes are from this kind of demographic, from the inner city where fatherlessness is more prevalent. But that is the extreme of it. How can Robert, as a little youth in a church, identify some of the woundings or the results of some of the woundings of my father? Because I'm not shot nobody. I'm not go out and pimp out nobody and thief nobody in Napoleon. So, I'm good. I'm not a father wounds.
Yeah. Sometimes at church, it is how it displays itself in power.
Yeah.
A church very often is a place of power.
True.
And the youth in church who has been wounded by his father is going to want to exercise power in unhealthy ways.
Yeah.
He's going to want to dominate women. He's going to want to have his foot in the neck of some girl. He's going to call his girlfriend certain things. He's going to use religion to treat her in particular ways and so on. So it's going to come out in those ways. It's going to come out in that deep sense of loneliness that he still carries, because there are some things that only a father can satisfy in him, and he never had it.
Yeah.
And so he'll always be reaching for company in all kinds of things because he has never felt satisfied in himself. He's going to want to find, he can't be in a space where he's not with a girl or something, because of that sense of never having had father to help in his completing, he feels that I must always have a girl, I must always be on the phone, I must always be texting, there must be that constant presence of another in my space. Which also is unhealthy, that you never want to allow yourself to be alone with your thoughts, alone just with your presence, because father didn't help in the completing of that process.
True.
That's what is affecting us. So always wanting that other in your space constantly, no matter what, is surely an indication that the formation that should have taken place was not complete because father was not there. A third and important thing is that attitude generally to always want to bully others. A bully is a weak person. And we've seen that in church. Always fighting, always having something to defend. And naturally, the male comes with that component. But if it is not managed properly, if it's not channeled properly, we'll find that our boys are in that space of bullying, of ripping down, of taking down the weaker, of saying unkind things in harsh ways to show that I am man. But really, it is hiding the weaknesses of not being the kind of man that God had intended in the first place. We see those things at church, and if we don't have those conversations about fixing them, those problems are going to perpetuate.
So, and I like the fact that these things may come across as even subtle. They're not readily identified. Like for me, I mean, I was a drunkard from early. And I later, as Courtney brought me through certain stuff and by doing certain psychology courses as well, that's when I recognized really, even before Courtney came, when, you know, I had a teacher from the Brethren Circle, Gertig, Chris Gertig,
Yes.
who he was my first psychology teacher. And when I sat in his class and started to learn certain things, I said, okay, this is why I'll prefer to sit at the back of all my classes. Like, you put me in the middle of the class, I feel nervous, bro. So when I started going to high school, I pick up my chair from the first day of class and I go to the back of the class.
You move it.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And even at JTS, because he called me over once and said, Robert, why are you always sitting either directly to the door or to the back of the class? And I didn't know it was a thing, right? I didn't know it was a thing until I started looking at these things. So we are saying, bros, that there are some things that are subtle. Some things that are not as loud as clapping a bullet in a man's head. You know, but some of these inner feelings, the inner battles that we harbor. We know men are normally supposed to be assertive, Napoleon. And, you know, who is it? Erik Erikson has this walkthrough of woundedness, isolation versus association, and these walkthrough in psychological terms. Yeah. But how important is it for a father to praise his son so that this son can have not this high-mindedness, but he can have a more balanced personality when it comes to dealing with people? Because you talk about the church, and a lot of our men in church in the pulpits are men with father wounds. A lot wouldn't admit it, you know, but how we see this manifestation of me are the boss and me are the leader. Is that assertiveness, or does that come from a place of brokenness? What does a well-formed individual look like?
Yeah, it comes from that place, Bobby, that very place. You see, it's amazing that we can praise Jesus and praise the Lord and hallelujah, but we can't praise our sons.
Yeah.
We can't see a good thing, that child that we help to produce. We can't commend him. We can't affirm him. We can't say positive things about him. But we can come to church and lift up holy hands and praise Jesus and stuff.
Yeah.
We have gotten it wrong. I see the patriarch blessing his sons, saying positive things about them. Some of these were very rough men.
Yeah.
Some of these men did some very unpleasant things. But the father had a sense that this is how I'd like to see my boy develop. This is what I'd like to see of my son. And he began to speak those things in his boy's life. And those things are very, very, very important. Commend him when he does something right. Confront him when he does something wrong. But in every situation, make sure that that boy feels your love and your commitment to him.
Yeah.
That is what is going to make the difference in relationship later on, in how he understands relating to authority, relating to other men, and critically how he relates to women. Yeah. If he does not have that sense of affirmation, he's going to try to find it in some place. And if he doesn't get affirmation at all, he's going to see himself as wicked and evil and bad and all of those things. And he is going to act out wicked and evil and bad in his other relationships. Yeah. This is critical. And when we miss it, we miss God's intention for healthy relationships right across the board.
Yeah, perfect. There's a scripture verse that I want us to look at. And this is not by any way, I know reformist or stay in terms of trying to humanize Jesus Christ. This is not the bro Jesus kind of thing. But Matthew 3:17 naps. Yeah. This is our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Right? Being quote unquote validated by his heavenly Father. Yeah. This is my beloved son. Yes. Ownership, and our boys need to be owned.
Yeah, man.
Too many of our boys are told, and I'm picking, look like me, and there's this suspicion, primarily in our situation where the man is a visiting sperm donor, where if the boy wanna look like him or look like him father, and a family picnic, right, or some member of the family, and we are disowning our boys too often. Our boys need to be owned. So the father looks at the son and says, "This is my beloved son." Acceptance, and then affirmation, in whom I am well pleased.
Yes.
Not that Jesus Christ is like us in a sense, but this is crucial to our conversation.
Yes.
The affirmation of your sons and the acceptance of your sons,
Yes.
right? To develop
And the,
character, to develop personality, to develop a well-rounded and a well-formed individual. You get me? And if this is true of Jesus Christ, we are saying, brothers, we have to make sure that this is true of our sons as well. Right? Before we go, bro, I'm going to segue to Austin and come back. I want to
just
come back,
before
we're
we
going to
go,
look
just
at
before we go to
how.
Austin, there's a
Yeah,
third
go ahead.
component of that. The affirmation of him, but also the invitation of others
Yeah,
to
yeah.
believe in him the way
Yes,
I believe
yes,
in him. So,
yes.
so that is a critical component. I believe in my son. In the same way I believe in my son, I'm inviting you to believe in my son.
Yeah.
And that too is a critical component to helping your son to understand that I have confidence in you wherever you are.
Yeah. Yeah, it is essential. You know, I remember doing this with Alex at a very young age. And it is something that is easy to do now in a sense because of social media. But when Alex started saying his ABCs, bro, I would capture him saying his ABCs and celebrate it by putting it on my status.
Yeah.
And allowing people to look, this is my nephew in whom I'm well pleased, quote unquote.
Yes.
You know, look at what he's doing. And I'm
Absolutely.
thinking that a lot of our fathers need to be doing this
with
our children. When a father can come to service, like my pastor now celebrates one of his sons who is following in his footstep.
Yes.
You know, his boy is trained in quote unquote secular jobs, but he is celebrating the fact that his boy is now doing seminarial studies and going to seminary, wanting to become a minister, ministering in a church in England. And this is something that we have to do, even when our boys fail sometimes.
Absolutely.
We have to look at it and say, oh, look at my boy trying to walk. Look at my boy trying to do this. And we have to as well say, yo, I believe in my picnic. You know, my father is doing this now. You know, I remember going on Ian Boyne's show, and when I reached at him shop, he called the neighbors. He said, the boy I tell you about, and I felt proud.
Yes.
You know, it wasn't because I did it, but I just felt proud that my father had a reason to celebrate me. My father had a reason to parade me. You know, and I'm saying to our men, do this more now.
Celebrate the boy some more, yeah, man.
Celebrate the boy some more, man. Wear him, if him go run and him win a medal, wear the medal, go work and say, look, my boy pick me.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
you
man.
know? And we're not saying don't do this for your girls, but because we are addressing the issues with our sons in society,
yeah, man.
We are saying this is crucial. Here's a man who, before us, celebrated his son, calling him at his father's graveside and saying, Austin George Henry, happy Father's Day, and loving on him. And we are saying this is something crucial. Listen to Father Austin's insight, and we'll come back and further this conversation on the father's impact in the life of his son. Stick and stay.
Greetings. Toxic relationships. Does it start with self? Is it that the person being toxic is having a hard time with loving his or herself? Is it that he or she doesn't even like themselves? There's a jumbo size pink, blue, green, and polka dot elephant in the room of most discussions. And it is called depression, anxiety, mental illness. I read a meme the other day. Depression is when you don't care about anything. Anxiety is when you care too much about everything. And having both is just like hell. It is not my intention to give anyone a pass. We should be accountable for our actions and words. But there are more people who have depression than really know it. Misery loves company. It's an old saying that is not a cliche. Women are crying out in different forms based on the nurture the society and the culture has trapped them in. Depression has imprisoned their soul. The status quo has them in prison and jail. The man whose loins they came from abandoned them years ago. The men they meet now only want one thing, and it is a shame to call it lovemaking. They need healing. Where do they go? These wounds and issues have been passed from generation to generation, and until and or unless there is a definite cure once and for all, the recycle will continue. And I'm not talking about generational curses. No, that doesn't exist. From Old Testament times, God put away that proverb. But what is happening is that the sin nature continues to spread like corona on steroids. We keep hurting ourselves and other generations because we are hurt. Misery loves company. What is the cure? Love. Yeah, love. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Indelible in that commandment is that you have to first love yourself. Nothing wrong in self-love. Now there is narcissism and egoism and egotism and a whole heap of other ism. But those aren't love. Love of self implores one to care for self and to have the wisdom that there is only one race, the human race. So if my neighbor is all right, then the neighborhood will be healthy. Don't bother with the placebo, also known as fake. Turn with me a little bit to 1 Corinthians 12:28. Do you see there where it speaks about the gift of helps? Many of us are gifted in assisting others in various ways, and there is no end in the assisting of our neighbor. Be genuine with and in love. For there are people who are so chronically or clinically depressed that they don't even like themselves. Misery loves company. So whilst we hold each other to account in love, let's look out for the signs of mental illness in others. A person with a heart condition cannot help it if they faint or vomit. The depressed individual will seem to be toxic because the brain is malfunctioning. Trust me, he who feels it knows it. I had a great time of reasoning with Naps the other day. And one of the points raised was that Jamaican men only have 1.5 emotions. The half one is happiness. We love sports and liming and other stuff. But we only get half joy from them because other issues of life robs us of complete full joy. The full emotion that we have is anger. If we feel contempt, we turn to anger. Sadness, we take anger for it. Fear, you guessed it, anger. Disgust, a double dose of anger that. Contempt will triple the dose of anger. It has already been stated by Naps and Robert, but I would like to repeat it. We have got to find a way to get our Jamaican brothers to get in touch with their emotions. Accept the emotion for what it is, confront it, and work on it with maturity. Misery loves company. Is it possible that many of these men and women, boys and girls who have daddy issues and father wounds have been dehumanized to a state of depression? Is it possible that depression is an underlying cause. The struggle is real, but love is able. Bless.
Yeah, my people, my people, my people. Thank you for sticking and staying and watching and being impacted by Austin's insight. As we say, he's a brother. Well, he's the uncle, so to speak, the brother of our mentor, right? But he has taken us as brothers. It's good when a man who you look up to can treat you as an equal.
Yeah.
And that is essential. And we continue to enjoy Austin's presence and his gifts towards us in many different ways. So,
Yeah.
bro, we've been looking at the father issues and the father wound and how this would affect us as men. But we don't want to end this episode without looking at the first step to healing. Where do we start? Where do we begin the narrative? If I've recognized from watching this or from hearing different persons speak about this father wound, and I want to come from underneath, quote unquote, the curse of it, where do I begin?
We want to encourage fathers to go back to their sons. The father may feel that it's past.
Yeah.
But I want to suggest that here's a place for hope.
Mm-hmm.
One of my first conversations with my father didn't go too well. I wanted to lead him to the Lord.
Yeah.
That's what I thought was the right thing to do. So I was telling him that the wages of sin is death.
Yeah.
And he laughed at me. He says, exactly, I'm still alive, so I'm not a sinner. Try again, you know?
Yeah.
But I shifted and began to talk to him as a man, rather than trying to do the thing I thought I should do, witnessing and so on. But talk to him as my father. And I tell you, Bobby, that changed how we began to relate for the latter part of our time together.
Yeah.
So we have to start the conversation there. And also, can you just stop long enough to know where your father is coming from?
Mm-hmm.
My father, he was put out on the streets at 8 years old.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
He was living on the streets in Montego Bay, of all places. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Some man who drove the tractor found him and taught him how to drive the tractor. I didn't know that. I just thought that this man just never cared for my mother, and that was it. But he too had a history. He too had a story. So I want to suggest to some brothers, just stop long enough and hear your father's story. Because guess what? He is carrying his wounds as well.
Yeah.
He's carrying his wounds from his father. He's carrying his wounds from his generation. He's carrying his wounds from his history.
Yeah.
And all of these things are important too. So can we just step back, as Jesus often does, and have a conversation? Have a conversation with your father. Have a conversation with your son. Begin to go back to hearing the feelings again. What we have taken away from our men is the ability to talk about feelings.
True.
Ask the average man, how do you feel? I feel away.
Yeah.
He can't say I'm hurt.
Yeah.
He can't say I'm angry. He can't say I'm disappointed. He can't say any of those things. The most that he's been allowed to do is to say, I feel away.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can begin to help men to deal directly with their feelings, and boys to begin to deal more directly with their feelings, we would have started the journey. But what I think, obviously, we'll need to do is just flesh this out some more properly so we can step by step help men work through feelings, issues, the fears that we carry, the anger that comes out in so many different ways, and see models of men who have had tough spaces with their fathers, but have made it and are doing well. Not perfect by any means, but men who are impacting in the transformation process. Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful, bro. And we're going to pick up this conversation next week as we look at how do we come to a place of healing, or at least begin the healing process.
Yes.
Right? So next week's conversation is going to be a continuation of this, but because this is so crucial, And you know, if society is built on the family, we have to try to repair the family.
Repair the
Because we
family.
can repair society. We
Yeah.
can't go from the trying to cleanse the bottom of the stream when the head of the stream dirty. You know, so
Absolutely.
we're going to continue this conversation. But before we go, bro, challenging times for you ahead, because I'm about to throw some quick fire things at you again.
Yes.
And there's one that is crucial to what you just said by Benjamin Disraeli, or Disraeli. I would pronounce his
Disraeli.
name as a Jamaican, but man is never so manly as when he feels deeply, acts boldly, and expresses himself with frankness and with fervor.
And that's a proper man, if we want to put proper there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a man who knows himself, who is not afraid of his situation, and who knows how to own a moment so that he's seen for who he is, a true man.
Mm-hmm. And Franklin William Robertson. It is not the situation which makes the man, but the man who makes the situation.
Because the situation always brings out what's in the man. The situation really tells what makes him, so that as the situation unfolds, his character comes out. And that's very, very important, especially in our conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And Nelson Mandela, we didn't get to go to Robben Island when we were over there. But Nelson Mandela, when a deep injury is done to us, we never heal until we forgive.
Boy, that is a conversation all by itself.
That's why
the ultimate strength of a man. Yeah, that ultimate expression is the capacity to let a person go and recognize that in letting that person go, we are freeing ourselves.
Wonderful. That's I left that one for last, because that's where we're going to pick up the conversation next week.
Yeah, man,
I'm going to start with this quote, because a powerful quote from Nelson Mandela. And it's crucial in the aspect of healing, the ability and willingness to forgive.
Yeah.
People, this has been Ishden, and this has been your boy Robert Green, and him brother in Jesus Christ's name, and brother in a real life, Napoleon Black.
Yeah.
Over there in Kingston, originally from St. Elizabeth.
That's
I go to a school or college does out every year, Monroe College. I can't leave without throwing that one. So big up for yourself on behalf of Father Austin, Napoleon Black. This is Robert saying peace out. See y'all next week. Boom!